The former high-level aide to New York Governor Katie Hochul, a Democrat, was arrested and federally charged with being a secret foreign agent for China and the Chinese Communist Party.
I love it because God's exposing. He's exposing. He's going to do this. They create the chaos so they can be the saviors to bring a solution. You know, you're a mama bear and you find out that California just passed a law where teachers and school administrators have the right to keep secrets from the parents, and you find out about that. What are you going to do about it? What has happened in the past, because history is repeating itself? Stalin, Mao, Hitler, all three of them came between the parent and the child. When are Americans going to stand up and say no?
I would definitely like and would love to talk other topics than just about communism, but literally,
no, please.
But literally, communism is about to take over the U.S. Did you hear the news about the Katie Hochul's assistant?
No.
You haven't heard the news?
No.
Oh, wow.
Did it come out yesterday?
No, just recently, maybe an hour ago.
Are we going to have some tea?
Yeah, sure. Let me get the story. It's great.
Well,
I'm so happy you haven't heard about it.
No, so I have to say that I have to take some mini breaks from the news because it's constant barrage. It's constant barrage.
So that's official.
Take a little bit of a break.
The former high-level aide to New York Governor Katie Hochul, a Democrat, was arrested and federally charged with being a secret foreign agent for China and the Chinese Communist Party.
Wow.
Yeah. Linda's son and her husband Chris Hu were allegedly paid millions to further the CCP's interest in New York. Wow. That's not a fairy tale. Wow. That's a true story. It's all over the news.
I love it. I just love it. I love it because God is. We're going, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I love it because God's exposing. He's exposing. He's going to do this. Like, I mean, I'm in the Old Testament right now, and God has gotten his people out of slavery time and time again. And he'll come through. He just wants enough people to wake up. This is what I think. He wants enough people to wake up to who he is, and there's got to be a great awakening. But I believe that it's happening. So this is good.
But at the same time, it was happening in 2020 with the Hunter Biden's laptop, right? Mm-hmm. But Facebook suppressed it. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, everything.
Yeah.
All the social media platforms suppressed it.
Yeah.
And just a week ago, Zuckerberg came out saying, I regret doing that. Mm-hmm. So this time, it seems like they're not going to get away with this kind of stuff. That's freaking crazy.
Well, I find it very interesting that in our last interview, as well as recent social media posts that I've made about communism and socialism and Marxism, that people will come back and say, well, Trump's this, that, and the other, trying to pin that on him. And you look at his policies, you look at everything that he's done, and then you look at the Democrat Party, the current Democrat Party, and I'm not saying the Democrat Party of all time, but I'm just saying the current progressive leftist Democrat Party. You look at what they stand for. They stand for censorship. Mm-hmm. They stand for equity, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, which is, if you dig into it, is Marxist ideology. And again, we don't have to talk about all this, but I'm just saying that like if you really look at all of the facts, if you're a factual person and not just like someone who has Trump derangement syndrome, which like doesn't make you think straight at all, if you literally like are, because like I'm not like, I mean, I got my degree in sociology at UC Davis. Like, I'm not like no dummy, right? You know, you go, okay, I want to look at the facts here and there. Am I wrong? Like factual. But if the facts line up, and I think I said this in my last interview, I don't know if you remember this, but when O.J. Simpson was on trial for killing his wife, the resounding words of one of his attorneys was, is if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. And like literally it's that. Like literally Like, if it doesn't fit, you're trying to put something on something that's not there with Trump. And I'm not saying that, like, Trump's the best thing since sliced bread. He's a man and he has, like, all sorts of crazy, flaws, as we all do. But, like, if you're literally going to look at the facts of what he did between 2016 and 2020, and then you look at where we are now from 2020 to 2024, you can't say that we're in a better place right now.
It's impossible to say that. There has never been a moment in time in history in the U.S. where gangs were taking over buildings, like in Colorado, Aurora, right?
Yeah.
And yesterday, Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yes, in Chicago as well.
It's funny that you say that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So before we start, I have read your book, and is that true that you're turning 50 in a week?
I'm turning 50 next Tuesday.
That's crazy. So I have a gift for you.
Aww.
So there's nothing better than Ayn Rand, and I know that you haven't read those books.
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, this makes me cry.
But it's like Communism Manifesto, but the vice versa.
Okay.
The opposite stuff. It's amazing, especially the fountain head. I believe you're going to love it.
Thank you so much. Oh, you're so sweet.
So I did my research, and I have talked to my grandma, which is 83 years old. Mm-hmm. She's from Lithuania, obviously, but in 1961, she migrated from USSR's Russian territory. Mm-hmm. She migrated to USSR's Lithuanian territory. So
what
I have talked to her.
What year was that?
61.
Okay.
And I have talked to my dad. So my dad is 59. Mm-hmm. So he was born and raised in Lithuania, which was communist at that time. And I have some information, some statistics according to life that took place really in Lithuania, not from the textbooks, not from other stories, but what people really experienced.
Okay.
So let's talk salaries. So let's take two cities. So in a small city of Lithuania where my grandma was from, that was a small city, I want to say 30 to 40,000 population. So the salaries in the 1960s and 70s were around 70 to 80 rubles. We're gonna talk about prices as well. In the meantime, another decade in the 70s and 80s in the capital of Lithuania, which is a 500,000 people population, where my dad moved when he was 18, it was almost twice bigger. So the salaries were like 100, 120, 130 rubles. For instance, in the mines in Ukraine or in Russia, people could get even up to 700 rubles. That was a lot. So keep in mind, so average salary at that time around 100 to 120 rubles, right? So let's talk prices. So bread, 12 cents a loaf, 12 cents. Sausage, 2 pounds, 1 ruble. Beer, 30 cents. Vodka, 1 liter, 3 rubles. Cigarettes, 15 cents. So it was very cheap to eat, to drink, and to smoke. But at the same time, average salary, 120, 150 max rubles, right? TV set, 250. Can you imagine what's the average here in California wage?
Oh, gosh. Average wage?
Yeah.
In California, it's probably, in order to live here, it's probably at least, it's got to be $100,000.
A year.
Yeah.
So it's around, $8,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
Imagine earning $8,000 a month, but the TV set is $20,000.
Yeah.
So a car, right? A luxury car, which was Volga at that time, 8,000 rubles. But that was new. If you go to a store, you should buy this luxury car for 8,000 rubles. But you couldn't. So on the black market, this car was selling by 20,000 rubles because you couldn't get one. So the most affordable car was named Zaporozhets. That's not even a car, but anyways. So average salary 100 and 150, right? So the new car cost 3,500, 3,500. You couldn't buy new. That was impossible. You could buy only on the black market for 5,000 rubles. So people waited in lines, in queues for 5, 7, 10 years for a new car.
Yeah.
They got money, they couldn't get anything. Everything was in deficit, right? So people waited for 10 years to buy a new car, for instance. Furniture, just like we spoke the last time, I want to say. There were like 5 positions of furniture. For instance, 5 different chairs, 5 different tables, 5 different closets. That's it.
Right.
There was a big chance that you go to your friend's house and you'll see the same chair, the same
Right.
table, because that was that were the only positions.
Right.
Clothes, no jeans, no sneakers, like nothing at all.
Yeah.
Jeans were prohibited. You couldn't get any jeans from the US or from other Western countries.
Yeah.
So food, my grandma told me that she had the wedding in 1964. So there was a food shortage back then. So they collected food for a month or 2 prior to the wedding. They just stood in line for hours, for days, just to get some meat, something.
And just to be clear for your audience who doesn't know, this was under communist.
Oh yeah,
communist
yes,
rule.
Yes.
So
not
I mean,
free enterprise.
And I have to say this because a lot of people don't know, they don't understand about they don't understand about the Soviet Union. They don't understand, and I didn't even understand the rise of Lenin and Stalin, and then the USSR, and how and what the territories were. So just to be clear, Lithuania was part of Soviet Union, and it was all the way from it was all the way up until the wall came down, correct?
Yes.
The wall came down. So
the wall came down in 1989, right?
Yeah.
So Lithuania got our independence 1991, 2 years after it.
So, and then when were you born?
88. So I don't remember
Wow.
those times, but my father does.
But just the sheer fact that you were alive during that period is amazing. Like, even though you were a baby.
So 1991, right? So we declare our independence, and at our capital, which is Vilnius, we were living at the time with I was living with my parents there in the capital of our country. In 1991, January 13th, the Russian tanks arrived and they shoot at our TV tower. That was chaos back then. But that was only a few hours. They killed, I want to say, dozen of people, and they left. So they tried to do something about it, but they already couldn't. So let's get back to the stats, right? So no tea or coffee. No tea or coffee at all.
You mean no Starbucks?
No brew tea, nothing. No black, green, like nothing. No, almost no sugar. You had to wait for sugar in lines, or you have to wait next month. Maybe the sugar will arrive next month. So I was asking her, so when was the first time you tried coffee? 1985, maybe something like that. So tea. So what were you doing? What were you drinking? Just water. So no tea. No, they had, for instance, currant, you know, this plant. So they took the leaves and they just brewed the leaves. That was their tea. No sugar. So apartments, for instance, in that small town of Lithuania, my grandma, she bought an apartment which was 500 square feet. So that was cooperative. That means people gathered together and told the government, we want to live in the apartments. Should you do something? So she paid 1,000 rubles upfront, and then she paid 10 years every month with monthly payments, 25 rubles. So what was banned? Religion was banned. Obviously, no religion, no business, no free enterprise, no jokes about the government. You could go to jail right away. No Western culture at all. No music, no movies, no TV shows, nothing from the Western world. And you were always afraid of your neighbor. You were always afraid of your neighbor because he could tell the KGB that you, for instance, you had a joke about Stalin. He could call the police, the militia at that time.
Right.
They would come and you would have to answer the questions. It didn't matter whether you said the joke or not. You would have to answer the questions. And everyone was supposed to get to work. There was no such thing as unemployment. And I was asking me that, like how is it possible? It was like, you don't work, you got one warning, right? You got one warning. If you don't find a job in, I want to say, in a week or two, someone calls and says, my neighbor is not working, he's unemployed. The KGB comes and you're going to go to jail for a month, maybe for the first time, maybe for two. So there was no such thing as unemployment. So my grandma in the 60s, she grew up on a farm, not a big town in Russia. After the war, her dad died in the World War II, so she was raised by her mom and with her two sisters. And they were supposed to do only two things at the moment. Either you go and you seek for the education, right? You go to college, or you go and work at the farm. You couldn't choose any job, other jobs. Why? Because they didn't have any passports. They wouldn't get you even a passport to get a job, other job, rather than to work on a farm. One interesting thing. So my dad and my mom, they met at the fields, at the potato fields. I was like, how is this possible? My mom, she was raised in the capital of our country. So she and her classmates, she was sent, for instance, one time she was sent at the northeast of Russia to work there for a month for free. She was working just on the fields, collecting strawberries, potatoes, something like that, tomatoes, cucumbers. 1 year in summer, she went and worked in the fields, I want to say 100 miles from the capital of our country. And my dad from other part of the country went on the exact field to work for free for the communists to collect potatoes. That was September. That's how they met. That was the exploitation of the kids. I was asking my grandma and my father what were the pros of living in a communist country. So both of them named 4 things. It was safe, absolutely safe. It was they had cheap electricity and gas. People could leave the doors unlocked, and they had free medicine and education. So the first 3 points: it was safe, cheap electricity and gas, and the people could even go out without locking the doors. I believe you had the same thing here in the U.S. 20 years ago, right?
Well, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and it was safe growing up, relatively speaking. And, I just don't remember any scary thing when we'd come home, we'd play until dark, and then we'd come home, and our parents weren't worried about anything. Now, there are still parts of America that are like that.
You mean people weren't worried about their child getting just...
Yeah. I can't speak
kidnapped?
As a parent because I was obviously as a child, but I think I wrote in my book that, it was like a fun, the 80s, I grew up in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and it was just, it was fun. It was fun, to be a kid. And, I certainly didn't grow up in LA. My husband actually did grow up in LA. And so it was, there were gangs and it was rough and all of that stuff. But I think that, I understand what your parents were saying and your grandma was saying about that it was safe and there was free healthcare and all these things. But then all of the beautiful things that we have now in our life, which is freedom of religion and the fact that we can have, that there's thousands of places to buy furniture and thousands of outfits that we can wear and all of that. It's like, what do you,
would you trade one for another?
What would you trade? Also too, if we really do in this country abide by the Second Amendment in the Constitution, which, really our rights as gun owners shall not be infringed, which means in any way, if we were really exercising that, then the bad people wouldn't be the only ones who had guns. We would have all these good people that have guns, and so it actually reduces the crime issue because people aren't going to step to people who know how to right take. But if you notice that it's really hard for a good person to get a gun, very hard for a good person to get a gun, except for a few states, particularly in California. But it's very easy for a bad person to get a gun. Like, case in point, these Venezuelan gang members who took over the apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. But if you could neutralize that and so our Constitution, my point is, our Constitution is so unique, and I'm not a Constitution scholar by any means, but it's times like these when you've heard all your life, or I've heard all my life, and maybe you have, that the Constitution of the United States is very unique. There's no other document like it in the world, and it provides us everything that we need. It's like a framework, and the founding fathers were geniuses to know what to do, right? And so theoretically, this Constitution should be carrying us through this time. But our country got very complacent, very comfortable. I call it the syndrome of, laying on the couch and watching Netflix and eating bonbons. And it's funny because Eric Metaxas, who stars in our film Letter to the American Church, said, "Who eats bonbons anymore?" I'm like, I don't know. Whatever they eat, Cheetos or whatever. But, I just think of little ice cream bonbons or whatever that people are eating and getting fat, getting on fat on processed foods and, just being lazy. And so I think that's a real accurate picture of America in the last, 20, 30, 40 years, who've gotten very complacent. And the people who have not been complacent are the Marxists. That they have had a full 100-year plan and it's a slow go, like it's a slow burn, and very methodical, very strategic. And so, and again, history, if you look over the past 40 years, if you look very closely at the history and the history of the Democrat Party, the history of the GOP, the Republican Party, and who has done more for advancing their candidates, it's pretty clear that it's been the Democrat Party. And that's why we have a supermajority in our state legislature here in California. And it is why we are having a really hard time keeping the House and the Senate as conservatives. And really, I think where we are in this country now is it's really not a conservative issue or a liberal issue or a far right issue and a progressive leftist issue. I think it's a Constitution issue. I think it's people coming down to, do I agree and abide by the Constitution, or do I, like the New York Times posted last week in I believe an op-ed, they asked a rhetorical question: is the Constitution dangerous? So are you one that thinks the Constitution is dangerous? Which the only person who can think the Constitution is dangerous is essentially a Marxist.
Yes.
Because we live in a free capitalist society, and socialism and communism has never worked. It's never led to prosperous society insofar as the people are happy and alive and thriving. And I say this to say that we can look at China, and I believe we've been brainwashed to think China is an awesome, great society that is under the CCP, when there are millions who are persecuted for their faith. And there have been, it was not, was it 10, 20 years ago that there was the one-child law in China. And so anybody who got pregnant for a second time or third time, whatever, they had to have forced abortions. And it was the same thing. So you couldn't let out that you were pregnant. It was unless you wanted to have a forced abortion, or, even down to the point where you don't have say. Talk about not having say over your body, like my body, my choice, right? And so, I remember that growing up, the one-child law, and also to stand against the regime. You are not to stand against the regime, and you will be taken into custody if you do. And all of the things about it, it is truly a big brother state. I mean, communism is a big brother state. You're worried about your neighbor ratting you out. And look, we had this in 2020 with COVID here in LA, where you couldn't gather more than like, I think 6 or 10 people in a house. That was not Newsom ordered that you couldn't gather more than this amount in your house, and that there were literally people ratting their neighbors out in the name of health, right?
But that lizard could. But that lizard, he could. He was on a, on a party.
Yeah. He went to the French Laundry and did all the things, and he lived as a free man during that time. But see, that's the thing also about Communism is the people who rule at the top, they have complete freedom, and we are the slaves. And what this country, and again, slow, long play through educational institutions from elementary school all the way up to college and grad school, that we are not taught in depth Marxism, socialism, and communism. We may skirt over it. We may take a class about it if we opt into doing so in college, because you can pick and choose your classes. But it's not taught like it should be. And I know that's by design, so that we don't know it when it's here at our door. We don't know it. We can't see it. That's why people like you, I have a friend from Venezuela. I know several people who were not born in the U.S. who've come from communist countries and revolutions and things, and they see it so clearly. They see it so clearly because it happened to them. They see every tactic that's happening in America. And by God, if you can't sit down and listen to someone who's been through it, you can't listen to a testimony, and they're out there again. This isn't a Trump Kamala thing, right? Or Kamala, or however you say it. This is a constitution versus getting rid of the fabric of our country. I mean, the Constitution is on the ballot in 65 days.
In communism, the first thing that comes up always is the lie, right? So let's get back to China. So I did this exercise, mind exercise, I want to say 6 years ago. What's the population of China?
What is it? Oh gosh, it's in the billions, right?
1.4, 1.5, something like that.
Yeah.
A few years ago, they told us that they miscalculated a few hundred millions, right? But right now, I want to say it says 1.4 billion population, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have a calculator with yourself?
No, it's across the...
Let me give you. So let's do this. Let's do this exercise. So we just took 20 biggest cities of China by population. Mm-hmm. And the numbers are 200 million. Mm-hmm. So where are the rest? 1 billion and 200 million people. Mm-hmm. It can be 1 billion and even more. Mm-hmm. That's false. Where do they live? Mm-hmm. We took 20 biggest cities, and that was the 20th had 5 million. So for instance, 29th just has 4 million. Mm-hmm. Then it has 2 million. There is no chance China has this kind of population.
Right.
It's not true. And let's getting back to Russia. So you said that the results of communism is very different than what you have when you have a free market, right? Yeah. So Russia nowadays, right? No automobile industry at all. So on this photo, you can see this is a screenshot I just made 2 hours ago from their official website. Mm-hmm. This is their sports car in 2024. So the engine is 1.6 liter, is 118 horsepower, and this is how the interior looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it's from the 80s.
This is the technology.
Yeah.
This is what they got in 2024. So Russia has no computer industry at all. They have no processors, they have no chips, no smartphones, nothing at all. They have no iPads, no MacBooks, nothing. Space industry is being disrupted by Elon Musk. So space industry was great during the 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe up to 2000s, maybe 2010s, because they could fly from Kazakhstan and take astronauts from Earth to space. Now, right now, it's being disrupted by Elon Musk because he does that, I want to say 2 times or 3 times cheaper. It's basically, Russia is right now oligarchy. And the last stat that I'm going to share with you is citizens that live in Russia, that live outside the big cities, 40% of them do not have restrooms inside their apartments. So they basically take a dump outside. That's the country. That's the result of the communism.
Right.
And every time I see Kamala speak, it's like straight from the book, right? Communist Manifesto. And every time I see the gangs take over Aurora, the gangs take over Chicago, maybe that's the card they're gonna play. They're gonna say, look, the crime is so high, maybe you should give up your guns. Maybe you should give up. Maybe we should tweak. Maybe we should change the constitution. So that would be law and order. And that's the first step to communism.
Right. They the idea is to create the chaos, and for them, they create the chaos so they can be the saviors to bring a solution. And that's actually a Masonic principle, that there's order out of chaos. And you can hear many leaders from times past, including Hillary Clinton, saying that we will bring order out of chaos. And so they look like the saviors because they come in with a solution. We're in a different position. I was here a month ago, right? We were here a month ago, and I think things are becoming much more clear as to. I think that there's a lot of clarity that's come out in the last month. I mean, for example, this Kathy Hochul's assistant, really that communists have infiltrated our government. And it's being exposed. We also have to, as believers in Jesus Christ, we have to read the word. And let me tell you something. I said at the beginning of the podcast that I need to take a break from social media over the weekend. And I kind of looked a little bit because I don't fully take a break because I need to kind of know what's happening. But I had to be in the word of God, because that is the only thing that is so super true and solid for me right now. Because what God has done all the way from the beginning to the end is he's always come through. He's always come through. Now, have there been seasons where his people have been in slavery? Yes. But there's more seasons than not. And then ultimately that Jesus has brought us salvation and full freedom. That he is the God of freedom. He's also the God of justice and righteousness, as we talked about last time. He will bring justice to those who deserve justice. But
it's up to us. It's up to the free will. We cast the vote. Well, you do, not me.
Well, I don't know. They're not checking IDs in California or most states, so you could probably just go in and just do whatever. That'd be really funny if we brought in a bunch of, or we activated all of the, not saying do this, I'm just saying it would be funny if the awake immigrants, right, who are here legally, voted. If you talk to them and they've done it properly, they all want to vote. Everybody I've talked to wants to vote for Trump and vote for conservatives because they understand. So I have, I know some people from Australia, and when we were going through the COVID time and just kind of the tyranny that happened then and all of these things, we talked time and again about how the guns were taken in Australia in the 80s because there was a mass shooting, and then they used that mass shooting as a false flag to take away the guns. And now, their people don't have anything. If tyranny comes in, they don't have any way to fight. It's like they're sheeple, But
it's so
you're
freaking
right.
scary.
Do we take action? Yeah, we don't just shut away. And as I joke with my friend, sometimes do I want to get in bed and pull the covers over my head and not come out? Absolutely. But once I recharge and I'm under the covers for like 12 hours or whatever, and then I come back out, I'm ready to battle again, and ready to take a stand and do what I need to do to save this country, to save our city, to save our state. And I can't not, because look at all these amazing champions of the Bible. I said this last time, these champions who, against all odds, saved a people. And it's like any good movie. Who doesn't want to be Jason Bourne, or who doesn't want to be Tom Cruise, like saving the day in Top Gun or whatever? Who doesn't want to be someone who, we look at those people, but then we look at those people, or we look at these characters or Bible characters or whatever, or even, I look at some people in Congress, or I look at some people who are battling at the state and local level, and I think, wow, I want to, that person is so badass. And I think that we need to start finding, this is a really interesting way of saying it. It's just that I haven't said this before, but I do think we need to find that kind of badass inside of us and go, how do I, and that's not biblical, by the way, but we need to find that inner warrior. And we need to say, okay, how am I going to be a warrior in this season for you, Lord? And I really think that's that needs to be a resounding question for Americans right now. And that's either, you're a mama bear and you find out that California just passed a law where teachers and school administrators have the right to keep secrets from the parents, and you find out about that. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And you got to ask yourself, okay, what are you going to do about it? You got to pray about it. And then you have to take action. You don't just sit there and let it happen over and over and over and over again. Because that bill, for example, in California, and look, as California goes, so does the rest of the nation. Don't forget about California, because it is powerful what they're doing in Sacramento. I give them credit because they're relentless. But this is the state coming between the relationship of a parent and a child. That the state is saying the teachers and the administrators can parent the child, make decisions for the child, and they're saying, oh, well, also, we don't want to tell the parents unless the child's okay with it. So you're saying that your 10-year-old is now struggling with their identity, which a lot of preteens and teens do, struggling with their identity. They confide in a teacher, and the teacher doesn't have to tell the parent that they're struggling. That's basically what it is. So the teacher can keep. Who is that teacher? What is their background? You don't know this teacher from Adam. They're in a position to parent your child. This is exactly as we spoke before, but I'm going to say it again because we got a lot of backlash on the last podcast. People coming against us saying, oh, that's not communism. You don't know what communism is. Well, I have done enough deep dive in the last year and a half, making Letter to the American Church, listening to Dr. James Lindsay ad nauseum, which would be a great podcast for you, by the way. He's amazing. You should get him out here and in this chair. Do your due diligence to understand what has happened in the past, because history is repeating itself. Stalin, Mao, Hitler, all three of them came between the parent and the child. The state came between, lest we forget Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Hitler coming between the parent and the child. So that's just one example. There are so many more, but that's just one example. The other thing that I want to say as well, that we're seeing in California, I was in a group of local leaders a couple weeks ago, and I said, look, guys, we are in socialism in California. We're not going there. We are there because the state has so much. The state is so regulated in our everyday lives that we're basically, we have handcuffs behind our back. We're handcuffed behind our back. Now, I want to say that when you are looking at an income of, let's say 100,000, okay, and you're looking at the tax rate, and I'm not talking just state income tax or federal income tax. I'm talking about also property tax as well. When you add that all up, let's say you're making 100,000, you add all of that up, it comes to about 45%. So that is half of your income. So you're not living on 8,000 a month. You're living on, and I'm not
50.
great at math, but you're living on 50,000. You're living on 50,000 a year.
And what you get for the money? No safety.
So literally you're giving almost half for what? For what? Okay. So let's just take in the last week or two that California also passed a bill that's going to Newsom's desk that they have opened up this state government loan to apply, that people who are underprivileged or low income or whatever can apply for down payment on their home. So the bill was amended to say that we will not discriminate against undocumented people. So it wasn't
AKA
that all of a
illegal
sudden.
immigrants.
So it wasn't all of a sudden that they just came up with a bill and said, "Oh, we're going to give 150,000 to." It's up to 150,000. But in the interest of diversity, equity, inclusion, because we're so loving and we're so caring, that we open up the scope of people who can receive 100. That excludes myself. It excludes my husband who does backbreaking work. Well, then they say, "Oh, well, you're white, you're privileged, so you have to give up a portion of what you're making to these people who aren't as privileged as you." So then it is now you're taking from those who have and giving it to those who have not.
I believe it's called.
We come back to the word communism. And also, I want to say that when we talk about the cultural Marxism that's happening in our country, which is the push to divide groups into oppressed groups, it's to create an environment where a revolution will happen so that you overthrow capitalism, you bring everything to a homeostasis, diversity, equity, inclusion, then you bring it. So that's creating the revolutionaries, whether it's the LGBTQ or, this real push against racism right now, or, that, it's racist and this and that and the other, which is interesting because really many, many, many African Americans have woken up in this country. And when you talk about it, it's really this whole racism conflict is about they have made it about the African Americans. But what about the Asians and the Indians and all the people? I mean, we live, and I'm not talking diversity, equity, inclusion, but we live in a small city in California, and talk about diversity. Like it's a beautiful array of different people, but the only people that they're really making a push, it's like pandering. It's like Kamala panders to the African American community, and they see it. I mean, look, you can't treat people like they're stupid. They're gonna see it, and that's what the Democrat Party has been doing, is treating African Americans like they're stupid. And it's embarrassing, actually. It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing when a governor says black people have no idea what a computer is.
There was a guy, I can't remember who it is. It might have been Steven Crowder or someone like that. But they went out into, I don't know, the inner city somewhere. and they go, okay, because, voter ID is racist, right? So he goes to a bunch of different black people in the inner city and said, hey, do you have an ID? And they're like, yeah.
Who doesn't?
Well, like, is it a driver's license? Yeah, it's a driver's license. Well, can I see it? Yeah. And then it's like every single person had an ID. How did you, and so he went further. How did you get the ID? Well, I went to the DMV. Like, it was like, why are you even asking me these questions? Like, it's because they have told you for so long that you're so stupid.
Yes.
You don't even know how to use a computer.
Yes.
You don't know how to get an ID. I mean, talk about the very definition of racism. I mean, like I said, it's embarrassing. It's actually, when I say it's embarrassing that Americans would do that to other Americans. So I just, like.
So in regards to your talk, saying that we have to take from the riches and give it to the poor. So in 1920s, when Lenin came to the power, and 1921, I want to say the Soviet Union was established. 1920s, 1930s, early 30s, they were doing this thing in Soviet Russia. So they were going after the very rich, and they had, for instance, 100 acres more of land, right? So they came to those people and said, from now on, this is not your land, this is our land. And not only you're getting rid of this land, of all your cattle and etc., of your house, home, everything, you're going to Siberia. And if you don't like it, we're going to kill it.
Right.
So that is called раскулачивание. So kulak means fist.
Yes.
Раскулачивание means open fist. In the fist, you have the money, the power, your land, home, cattle. It goes.
Did you say it's K-U-L-A-K?
Kulak.
Yeah.
It's a fist.
So again, taking it back to Dr. James Lindsay, who was in our film Letter to the American Church, and really, if you follow him on Instagram, which is @ConceptualJames, he has been consistently posting about all of this. So kulaks, and he'll break it down into definitions, and he will post all relevant factual information so that people who follow him will start to see the parallels that are happening here. Every single post is like that. And I really applaud him, because we need people to educate others on what this is. Some people are not going to wake up, but I think that many people are. And I'm very encouraged by that. Do I think that we're going to win the election and stop Marxism? I don't know. I think the biggest question is how bad's the cheating going to be? And I say that to say that there have been, estimates are 10, 15 million have been let in through the border, given housing, food, furniture. What we saw in a video last week in New York, where they had furniture trucks rolling up to the migrant housing where they were giving furniture. And so if they're doing all of that and I don't I even follow into it saying migrants, because I don't say, it's such a made up stupid word, because migrants, birds migrate, people don't. Come on. These are illegal, undocumented people who have come into our country and not gone through our legal channels this is where our tax dollars are going. Our tax dollars are going to take care of these people. That's the thing. And
at the same time, they hate you. They kill you. They rape you.
If you think that the government is not also setting them up to vote, then, I got a bridge to sell you. And I don't even know what that term is, but it's like, it's bananas. It's just stupid. That people that I just can't, you have to be a critical thinker of everything that's happening. You can't just have Trump derangement syndrome so bad that you can't critically think. You know, I can't stand that Biden's been on vacation laying on the beach for 3 weeks, but that doesn't stop me from critically thinking, right? But again, it's this Netflix, like bonbons, like I just listen to mainstream media and the New York Times is the gospel and all of that crowd that just some people won't wake up. And
Kamala 2 days ago said that she's gonna ban the Twitter, the X, because Elon Musk has a lot of privileges, just for all of us to have a free speech and to speak our mind. The same thing they did in Brazil, right?
Yep.
X is banned. The same thing they did in France. They arrested the Telegram CEO and the founder, Pavel Durov.
Yep.
He's next. He's definitely next.
Right.
If not Twitter, I want to say they wouldn't loosen their knots on censorship if not Elon Musk buying the Twitter in 2022.
Yeah. Yep, they're scrambling because they're losing, you know, in many ways they're losing power. They're losing power because people are waking up. And you know, it says in the word all things that are hidden will be revealed. And
they will fall into their own traps.
Yeah.
Why do you think Zuckerberg wrote that letter?
Personally?
Yeah.
Because I don't have any facts to surround this, but I think that he is hedging his bets that he will not get in trouble when Trump wins. That's what I think. I think he sees the writing on the wall that Trump is going to win, and he is, you know, trying to make nicey. Now, I say that and
but maybe he knows something. Maybe he knows that he's gonna be taxed.
He knows a lot of things. Believe me. So this wasn't just whoopsie daisies. Oh, you know, it's like I spilled the milk. You know, it's a little bit more than that. But I want to say that here in Southern California, there are there's a couple of badass lawyers. Mike Yoder is one of them, and he has an organization called Citizen AG and just filed a lawsuit against Zuckerberg. And so we have some pretty incredible attorneys in this country who are fighting, and then we have some judges and some district courts that are ruling in our favor in terms of the Constitution. They're ruling in favor of the Constitution. So it's not over yet, but we definitely need to stand up and again ask ourselves, what do I do? How do I take action right now to stand against what's happening?
You know what I don't understand? I don't understand one thing. So if all those big companies support the left, right? The radical left, at the same time, why does the government implementing this stuff? So this is an article, US considers a rare antitrust move, breaking up Google. Why? If those companies, if Google supports the DNC, why they still try to break up Google, for instance?
I don't know.
I don't know. And the guys sitting at Google, they don't see this. They don't get it. They are going to get torn apart financially, physically, by any means.
Well, I think that what's happening is the people who have been in bed with the Marxists and the elite and the progressive leftist Democrat Party, I think many people are starting to do what Zuckerberg did and hedge their bets. They're trying to, you know, I mean, and I don't know this for sure, but I would say that I believe there's a reckoning coming. And look, if you were a criminal, for example, and you knew that they were onto you and they had all the things, like you would start getting rid of you knew they were going to come after you, that you would start getting rid of all the evidence, you know?
Or just saying that you're sorry. I'm sorry.
Or just, yeah.
I'm sorry I did this 4 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, like it's just, like oopsie daisies. Oop, I made a mistake. I literally was part of swinging the election away from Trump because I mastermind all this censorship and all this stuff. And it's like, no big deal. I mean, look, I sat here last time we did this and sitting here this time, like, I'm not an expert in any of this, but what I've done is I've been doing my best to be a critical thinker and lining it up with the Word of God and asking the Lord to show me what's happening, asking the Lord to show me how I can be one to stand for righteousness and justice. And that's it. If I say that I personally have done any more than that, or I'm an expert, we have to, it's like Jesus, we have to fight with a cloak of humility. And that's what he did. He was simultaneously the God who went into the temple where they were doing business and making money with cords and whips and turning over tables. And he was also the person who loved the woman with the issue of blood, but then he was also the one who called the Pharisees a brood of vipers. And this is that moment. But
he was crucified. Yeah. It's not a happy ending. I don't want to be crucified.
Actually, it is a happy ending because he suffered for a short period of time to get all the glory. And so where he is now, it's like I haven't personally had a child like in my womb or given birth, but for every mother that will say how painful it was to go through that they forget all of the pain because of the glory of having the child. And I have to, we in these times, again, Netflix, bonbon eating, we haven't suffered. We have not suffered like your parents. We have not suffered like your grandparents. We haven't suffered like my friend who lost her whole family and everything she owned in Venezuela and grieves every day over the loss of that. We're just now starting to see like the kind of scariness, like the gangs taking over the apartment complexes in Venezuela. The Venezuelan gangs taking the apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. Or, we're just starting now to see this. And many Americans are ill-equipped for what is at our doorstep. But many Americans are equipped and have been equipping for years. And I believe that the elite, the Progressive Democrat Party, and those who have been in cahoots with censorship and all of the things, I believe they've sorely overplayed their hand, and they're not gonna win. So
maybe you can explain me this thing. If you are a Hollywood celebrity, right? You have hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. How can you be for the left, for the radical left, that say tax the rich, that are going to implement 80, 60, 70% of taxes on you, especially if you are very rich, and especially when the Kamala says that she's gonna do this, how is it called? Ungained tax. If your house, for instance, goes up in pricing,
right?
You're gonna pay even if you don't sell the house.
You're gonna pay the tax on the. You're
unrealized gains.
Yeah.
How is it possible to support that thing? Because of the inflation, your house is definitely going up.
So, just unpack that for a second, so that everyone knows that if you buy a house for $450,000, and then in 2 years it's appraised at $650,000, you're going to have to pay tax on the difference of $200,000.
Yes.
So it's robbing you silly. Again, why I'm saying that, that this is socialism, and socialism is just one foot in the water of communism, and then you just need to take one more step in and you're fully there. It's just inching towards it. So that's why I say in California, we have one foot in the water. But so what your question was, how can we not see that?
No, how can Hollywood celebrities, how can the rich support this?
I don't know the definite answer. I can only speculate that the Democrat Party has lauded these celebrities for years. They have basically supported them, funded them, backed them. You know, there's this symbiosis between Hollywood and the Democrat Party, and it's existed for years. And so the Democrat Party has become the party of basically the elite of this country. Mm-hmm. So they are the ones who dictate what we do. They dictate, they dictate the regulations. They they raise the most money for races and all of these things. So there has been this symbiotic relationship, which I'll just break it down into a way also that you can understand that the unions in Hollywood, SAG-AFTRA, as well as IATSE, which my husband's in, which is the part of the crew union, that both of these unions have been pro-Democrat for as long as I can remember, and I've been in SAG since 1994. Now, I was a Democrat back then because actually the Democrat Party has been corrupt for a long time. And look, I'm not saying that there's not corruption in the Republican Party. I'm just saying that we're looking at this right now. Why are the Democrats, in bed with Hollywood? That they have been pushing the Democrat ideology for years. That is what they do. It's like being married, and I think some of them are totally brainwashed, like the rest of America, that this is the best thing ever. The Democrat Party is the best thing ever. That they're totally brainwashed. I think some of them are financially beholden to them. I think some of them also are beholden to them in other ways. So let's just say many Hollywood celebrities who were involved with Epstein and who had been Epstein Island, all those things. It is said, don't know this for a fact, I haven't seen the videos or whatever, but it has been said that there are many videos that many celebrities and government officials have. They are videos that are being held over them so that they can't speak out. They can't go another way. That this is how they are basically saying you can't speak out, or we will reveal this video. So it is said, right? Allegedly, which I believe is true, but I can't prove it. But I also think that Hollywood, and so, by proxy, the stars in Hollywood has been the propaganda machine for this progressive leftist agenda for as long as we've been alive and longer. That there has been, and it goes back to basically Operation Mockingbird, right? Where the government and the CIA has been involved in what Hollywood puts out, releases and what they do, and how they change, because they understand how powerful it is that they can change the course of a nation through these films. And it's subliminal too. All this is subliminal. So it's, it will be like, oh, here's Tom Cruise. But then you have to be really keen and understanding, like you can see the indoctrination in between the lines. It's like reading in between the lines when you watch a film and seeing which direction they're pointing in. So
you want to say that even in the 80s with Top Gun, for instance?
I don't think Top Gun's a great example. I'm using Tom Cruise as an example because he's a celebrity. major
But
celebrity.
movies in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was all about the masculinity. Being a masculine, action movies, Schwarzenegger, Stallone.
Yeah, I mean there were some great films for sure, but I think that if we go back and we watch them now with the glasses that we've like
different lens.
Different lens, our glasses are cleaned and sharp, and we understand what's happening now, that we go back and we can see that was being pushed back even then, so that it primes our brains to, when it happens, that we're okay with it. So it's a psychological operation, which is pretty brilliant in my opinion, but we have to start to understand how the enemy is operating, and then we have to be very strategic as to how to get our way out of this.
But all the Hollywood celebrities or all the pop stars, they are nothing without us, the public, the audience, right? If we don't watch their movies, if we don't go to the cinema and watch their movies, they don't do well. If we don't listen to their concerts live, they don't do well. It's all up to us.
Well, okay, so Hollywood hasn't been doing well the past few years. It hasn't. I mean, with this, people can see the propaganda. They're not watching the films. They're not, they're not believing the DEI. They're not believing the lies. They're, I talked about last time that they made a film on, I think it's HBO Max. I could be wrong, but I think it's on HBO Max, which is Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn, which was the mistress of Henry VIII, and they cast a black woman, and it's like I'm not going to watch this crap that's like not accurate. Like, what are you just because you're fulfilling a quota? So people aren't watching it, yet they're still making it. So it defies logic. You would think that they would turn right when it's clear that, people aren't watching, that they would, okay, I'm going to go to another direction. They're still making it. So why are they still making it? I mean, we have to ask ourselves these questions because it's not adding up. It's not adding up.
Well, instead of 5 to 7 Marvel movies a year, Disney produced only one movie this year, the Deadpool. That's it. And it's super, I want to say it's very racist, very aggressive humor in the Deadpool. That's why people loved it. And it grossed $1.3 billion. That's what people love. That's what people like. And they pay the money to watch it. So they do feel it. And you're saying that they don't make any changes. That's not true. So for instance, take the Star Wars saga, right? The last movie was 2019. They still didn't produce any movies in the new trilogy.
Well,
their new TV show flopped.
But you're using examples of like sequels and all of these things. I mean, I'm talking about like TV shows, and like they're still continuing to make woke content. Is my point. They are still trying, maybe not as prolific as it was before, but they're, and that being said, from my standpoint as someone who's been in the entertainment industry for 30 years and my husband being in it for 20 years, and his family, that Hollywood is not busy. There aren't that many productions happening right now, and I'm talking here in LA. Okay.
Amazing.
It's Paramount TV just closed about 3 weeks ago on a Friday. They closed their doors. All of their content was adopted by CBS. I believe Warner Brothers is for sale. I mean, this is very clear they're not doing well. The issue is that people like my husband, the crew members, basically the blue collar workers of Hollywood are not working. And so you're crushing the middle class of Hollywood. The middle class of Hollywood is getting crushed. And there's really no, to be honest, there's really nowhere, for people who are working, I would say the lower class would be, like extras? Well, the extras aren't working because there's nothing happening. But the executives are still making a pile of cash. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Like, it's still, they're still, and, there are some productions happening where producers are working, but Hollywood is getting crushed right now. So the question is, back to your question about the stars. Why are the stars still aligning themselves with the progressive leftists? Like, you have to ask yourself, like, why are they? I mean, these are questions that, again, being a critical thinker, you have to say, okay, these things aren't adding up. And how do I make sense of it? So, hey, let me do some research a little bit further than just one Google search or whatever. Maybe I should read some books. Maybe I should read Ayn Rand. Maybe I should take a course on communism, socialism, and Marxism, which I'm doing right now. Like, maybe we should become more curious about what's happening because things aren't adding up.
But everything that the left touches turns to shit. Name me top celebrities, top actors and actresses right now in 2024. What would you say?
Well, I'm not watching much, to be honest with you, so I don't even know if I can name them. I mean, okay, I'll just there's Kevin Costner.
He's a star now, you want to say?
Coming off Yellowstone? Yeah, maybe I'm like a year late on Yellowstone or whatever, but I'm saying that if you look some long-running movie star, yeah, I would put Kevin Costner up there.
He's an old man. His last movie about America, the American Horizon, flopped.
My husband said it was very good. But it doesn't matter. You're asking me who I can think of right now, and that's what I'm saying.
Who's on the tabloids?
Okay, we will take Yellowstone for an example, that it was very popular, one of the most popular shows on TV.
And it was very conservative.
And it was, right? It was, yeah. But there was some woke stuff in there. It was like woven in, right? Gosh, I don't even know the.
That's the point.
I don't even the younger generation of stars right now. I do know a guy who was in a commercial that I was in who ended up becoming very successful, and he's doing a new TV show on FX. And so apparently that's like the best comedy of the year. I haven't watched it or whatever.
In the 80s to 90s, you could get one actor's face on a poster, and the movie wouldn't flop. Like Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Kevin Costner, right? In the 90s, especially 80s to 90s. Now, there is no way. So, for instance, one of the best paid actors right now is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Name at least one movie that is not shit.
Never watch one of his movies.
90% of all his movies flop. Timothée Chalamet, the Dune, right? The Wonka. It's not about him. It's about the movie. So the Dune is based on a best-selling novel that was written, I want to say, in the 50s. So it's not his. He's not the reason why the movie did so well. It's about the directors. Yes, Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, and etc. These are the stars, Tarantino's. But it's not about the actors anymore. Do you think Margot Robbie was the one that took Barbie to $1.5 billion? I don't think so. It's about the marketing, everything that was going on around the Oppenheimer and the Barbie at the same time, about this thing that the doll. Maybe a woman is as a director. Maybe that all those things added up. That's why the movie grossed $1.5 billion. But that's definitely not because of Margot Robbie. So what I want to say is that there is almost no celebrities right now. They say George Clooney did this. Who is George Clooney? Name me at least one great movie of George Clooney where he was a leading star. Ocean's 11? No, he wasn't. He wasn't the one. What are the other movies of George Clooney that were great?
George Clooney is also part of the Council of Foreign Relations as well, and he's a globalist, and I mean, a lot of these people are just in bed with the globalists. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And,
And that's how they can make a movie and flop and almost didn't feel it because they have all the money in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know that the landscape of Hollywood is shifting majorly, and I don't know how. I don't know what it's going to end up being like. I do know that people who are not in bed with the globalists, who are not in bed with the Mockingbird and taking this country further into the direction of communism. I know people who want to make good content need to step their game up and start making excellent content and not half-ass content. Not like I don't even want to say conservatives because I'm tired of using that word. People just who stand against it. Like, I think about, being a filmmaker and making Letter to the American Church, which is a documentary, but it is a documentary, but doesn't play like your typical documentary. But why are we not saying, okay, my goal in this project, moving into this project, is to make it with excellence, to make it beautiful, to tell an amazing story, to, and without all of the wanting to push the ideology through it. Why can't we just tell human stories? And I think that slowly maybe inching in that direction with Sound of Freedom, and there's another movie out right now, what's it called, with the child trafficking? It's another one.
City of Dreams.
I haven't seen it, but I'm hearing great things about it. And but those are both about child trafficking, right?
What about the Reagan? I just watched the movie yesterday.
Was it good?
It was an amazing movie.
Really?
2.5 hours, yes, amazing movie.
Okay.
It seems like the movie was shot in 1980s, maybe to the 1990s.
Okay.
Great picture, great acting.
They were making it for like 4 years,
Amazing
and so
movie.
it went through many different iterations because I know I'm kind of running in the circles of the people who made it. So I haven't seen it yet. But that's really good to know, and that's really good to hear.
In the end, you're going to cry.
Yeah.
The last scene, the music, the soundtrack, and the last scene.
Okay. This is really good to know because I know
try.
you would tell me otherwise if it was not good.
No, that was a great movie.
Good. Okay. So, yeah. So I think that like I said, I think we just need to continue on in that direction of how do I tell amazing stories? And yeah, you're going to say, oh, well, it's Reagan, it's conservative, or City of Dreams, it's about sex trafficking, which is a conspiracy, and blah, 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 and all these things.
It's what?
Whatever. But no. You know what I mean? Like, I'm playing the devil's advocate, right? Like on the left. But we need to start telling stories that are true and making films with excellence and understanding how to market a film and cracking the nut of distribution.
And a movie is an art. It's a type of art. It's not a propaganda. I want to go to your book and I have a few remarks. So on the page 7, you say, I was 10 years old and I viewed the world as my oyster. I always thought that I am the one that always thought that my childhood was amazing. I was safe, I was good, and the world was much safer than now. But if I remember, or if I ask my dad how was it like in the 90s, it wasn't that safe, it wasn't that not dangerous at all. So that means you, me, and all the children, we really lived just in an oyster. But at the same time, we have, you, especially here in America, you have never had this kind of crime, just regular crime. Just a week ago, 2 buses almost got hijacked with students.
Yeah.
That has never been an issue here in the U.S.
Well, let me clarify, because you were born in 89?
88.
88. So you are essentially millennial.
Yes.
And when I was 10 years old, it was 1984, and it was under Reagan. And so I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania. And so, like I said, I did not grow up in the Valley of LA, or I didn't grow up in New York City. New York City was pretty rough in the 80s. So it's not that it wasn't that. It was that I lived in small town America. And, I didn't have, I was 10, like I didn't have my finger on the pulse of politics or anything like that. I just knew that I was free to play or do whatever, like have imagination. And I did. I have a crazy imagination when I was a kid, as most kids do. And I would just, pretend that I was an actress or a movie star, or, I would ride my bike or pretend I was in the Olympics. And, I don't know, like I just did I was a silly kid.
But you could be outside on your own, without any phones, without any trackers, like AirTags, awesome. Apple Watch, anything. Yeah, it was looking back on it now. That created a low stress environment because I wasn't on a screen all day long. I barely even watched TV. I watched a little bit here and there, but I barely watched TV. And I bring that back. Please.
Yeah, well, parents can do that. Parents can actually really, they can be the ones who monitor screen time, and they can, that's why the state coming in between a parent and child relationship is so crazy to me. When you send a kid off to school, you don't know their science teacher, but like all of a sudden the science teacher and your kid form a bond, and all of a sudden they have secrets between them that they don't want you to know, and all these things. It's like, that's just creepy. Like, that's creepy. That can lead to like a million things that I don't even want to think about. But it's like, it's not okay. And I went to an elementary school where my mom was a teacher, right? So everybody knew me. I was one of the teacher's kids, and small town, everybody knew everybody. But I read a lot, and I just, we need that, but that can be regulated by parents. You don't have to give your child a screen.
But you can't regulate your child's safety. Just like those kids riding that bus that was almost hijacked.
Right. Well, the argument can be made that you can do everything you can to homeschool your child so that they don't have to take a bus. But you're right. I think it was a block from here, literally a block west. Last week, that doctor came out at the end of the night and he got shot in cold blood, like in the parking lot. Do you know about that? No. It's like I see all these things where you live in the valley, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be there. But the truth of the matter is, people don't think that's going to happen in Aurora, Colorado either.
Yes. That's a great area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently it's a affluent suburb of Denver, 20 minutes south. Mm-hmm. You don't think that that's going to happen there. But, I was thinking a lot about, because I knew that you were going to bring up the book and talk about the book and my story. And I was really thinking and praying about that before coming in today. And, I realized that what I had to fight through for personal freedom and personal breakthrough from things that had happened to me when I was a teenager, and the life that I lived, and the addictions that I had, that I had to really fight for personal freedom, that I wasn't oppressed, that I wasn't feeling oppressed. And I think that fight positioned me for the fight for our freedoms now, because I understood what oppression felt like, and that the word of God says it is for freedom's sake that Christ set us free, and that freedom is so important. And yes, that means freedom to sin, or freedom to choose God, or it means that you have free will. You are free to choose. But hallelujah for that, because if we talk about your grandparents or your parents, they didn't have those freedoms to choose.
Yes. So
they did not have those
in
freedoms
the books you're saying that you had those getaways to Europe, to Switzerland, to your parents, or to Pennsylvania where you were born and raised. That was kind of your oyster. But if you lose your country now to communists, there is no other oysters. Australia is done, UK is done, Europe is turning to
close.
shit,
Very
basically.
close. Yeah.
You've got nowhere to go. You have nowhere to hide. There is no such thing as another oyster, another continent, another country. That's it. Canada, done. Mexico, there is no way. Brazil, no way. There's only the U.S. That's it. If the U.S. falls, that's it. All the other oysters are being shut down. That's it. For a couple of weeks, I was awake for days on end, pouring myself out into art. Because I wasn't sleeping well, I had gotten off cycle of taking the medication. It needed to be taken in a very specific way and tapered off closer to the end of the bottle. However, I did none of that, but rather took the same dose the whole way through. By the end of the bottle, on my last few days, my brain felt like the wires were being pulled out of it. I started to melt down, so much so that it kept me awake at night. However, at the end of those 2 weeks, I started to crash. Depression, hopelessness, and suicidal thoughts took over my mind and body in those last few days. Don't you think that people are going crazy now in the US? Just some part of them going crazy because of the medicine that they're taking.
Yeah.
You have this huge crisis at this moment, right? Opioid crisis is still here. It didn't end in the 90s or early 2000s. It's still here with all the ADHD amongst the kids. They feed the kids with the sweeteners, with the sugar, the Red 40, etc. They get anxious, they get diagnosed with ADHD, then they take the pills, and they start taking the pills since they're 7, 8, 10 years old, and they never stop. And that's when you go to Venice Beach or you go to Santa Monica and you see people talking to themselves or just yelling at the sky. Maybe that's the reason, one of the many reasons.
Yeah.
What exactly?
That was prednisone. That was a very, very common steroid that doctors prescribe for anti-inflammatory, and it can have the side effect of making you manic if you don't take it properly, if you don't take the dosage properly. And so I had a general practitioner put me on that for respiratory infection when I was 19 years old, and didn't make it clear to me that how I needed to wean on it and wean off of it. And it just affected me just so badly. And
did the doctors tell you about the side effects? Like nothing, just take the pills?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, I mean, I think it said on the bottle, like, you have to take this amount and this amount and this amount. It's a very specific way that you need to take it in order to make sure that your body stays regulated.
But you became bipolar, right?
It made me manic. It made me manic, so that I wasn't sleeping for days, and then I crashed when I was off it, which made me very depressed and feeling suicidal. And so then I want to say it was about 10 years later that I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which is your thyroid is not, it's working slowly, right? So you are more sluggish, more tired, there's all sorts of symptoms, weight gain and all sorts of things. So, of course, I'm a 29-year-old actress and model and whatever, and I didn't want to be heavy or fat or anything, and I obviously didn't like the sluggishness and all that. So it's very common for women to go on thyroid medication, and they tell you that you have to be on it for the rest of your life because your thyroid is dysfunctional. So once COVID hit and we started to learn about big pharma and everything that was happening with the vaccine and all of that in 2020, actually my thinking was that if we are in lockdown and I can't get my medication, I don't want to be relying on medication. Like, I don't want my body to go into have a negative effect not getting my medication if I were not able to get it. That sent me on a journey of, is it possible for me to get off the medication even though the doctors say you'll have to be on it for life? So over the course of 2020 into 2021 and 22, I weaned myself off the thyroid medication after 20 years very slowly. I cut the pills in half for a season of time. Then I cut the pills in a quarter. And then I went every other day. And then I was completely off. And I have more energy, more clear thinking, more drive. I'm in better shape than I was when I was on it all of those years. And it's possible, it can be done. I am also taking very natural supplements that are continuing to help me with aging and slowing the aging process. But I am one of these rare anomalies that are not taking any medication in my life, and I'm about to turn 50. Really, so
that's an anomaly here in the U.S.
It's an anomaly here in the U.S. And I think that having gone through that episode with prednisone at a very early age I think that woke me up to big pharma and doctors at an early age. Although I fell into it, with the thyroid and got scared, and, a lot of it was vanity and not wanting, I don't want to have a slow metabolism and be heavy and all that stuff. So I just kind of was a sheeple and like, okay, I'll take it. But man, I had a UCLA endocrinologist tell me, she ran my blood work about a year ago after I'd been off it for a year. And she said, you're totally normal. I have had one other patient who was able to go off. Think of how many people a UCLA doctor sees, in a year or in her lifetime. I've only had one other patient who's been able to do this, and you've done it successfully. And literally, this was amazing because you never heard this from doctors, UCLA doctors. She said, you should basically open a business where you can help women, wean off this. It's possible. It's possible. And
how about herself? She's a doctor. She's supposed to help you, not prescribe medicine only.
That's the thing about what's happening with our medical system. And I challenge people to go read the book by Callie and Casey Means, but also watch the Tucker Carlson interview from about 3 weeks ago with Callie and Casey Means, the brother and sister, who are talking about how we are on this just massive cycle to keep you sick for the rest of your life. And then you'll be sick for the rest of your life, but you'll be taking medications for the rest of your life so that you'll be a constant consumer. You'll be a constant buyer. You will be constantly providing money to big pharma. And then the side effects from that medication then will prescribe you another medication so that you can be on that medication. And then the side effects from that. And pretty soon you have a whole array of pills. And so right now, my mom just turned 84 last week, and my dad's going to turn 84 in December. And he's now having all these medical issues that the doctors don't know how to treat. So for example, he keeps getting infections and wounds, right? In wounds. So scrapes his legs are really thin, or he has a melanoma removed and there's an open gaping wound. So he keeps getting these infections. So they've had him on antibiotics for consistently for the last 2 years. Well, the antibiotics aren't working anymore. And then what happens is that you become antibiotic resistant, and then you're susceptible to MRSA and staph infection, which then could seriously end his life.
Yes.
So they're getting him to the point where how much money has Medicare given to these big pharma agencies, right? Over the course of his time of having all these procedures done. And so then he gets another melanoma removed, and then he has to go through it again, and all of these things. And so, it's not conspiracy, it's real life. And, I like that Casey Means says, look, I think that, a lot of these doctors, they just don't know. I don't think that they're all malicious. I just think they don't know what's going on really in reality. And they're so pressured to do their job and provide, and, that they operate in the status quo.
I love what you wrote here. So you were quoting the Bible. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made and perfectly crafted in my mother's womb. Can you imagine if every human being on planet Earth would hear that and acknowledge that and understand that, even if they're not happy with the life that they are having right now, but still they were crafted in perfection, and that God knew, Jesus Christ knew them even when they were only in mother's womb. That would make us such an impact on the whole world, especially now. Just like you write in this book, you weren't happy with your weight, you weren't happy with the looks that you had because you were working in Hollywood. But once you turn to Jesus, once you realize that it doesn't matter how you look, it doesn't matter how much you earn, it doesn't matter how bad situation you are right now, Jesus Christ still loves you, and He loved you in the first place, and it's unconditional.
Yeah.
Do you think that would get a big impact on the whole world?
Yeah, it would. I used to, for a season, travel the country speaking to young girls, preteen girls, so about 8, all the way to 18, and I would minister on this verse and talk to the girls about, because they're going through such an identity crisis at that time, how they're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I had an object teaching lesson, which were these beautiful cowboy boots. I mean, you might think they're gaudy today, but they had like pink leather and all sorts of, like, you could see the stitching and all of the, just all the detail. They were really awesome. So many amazing pieces of clothing and shoes and boots that I've gotten rid of over the years, and those were one of them. But I would bring them on stage, and I would tell the story that the maker of these boots had a vision of what he or she wanted them to look like prior to making them. So sketch it out, understand exactly the colors, what materials that were needed to make the boots. And then the stitching was amazing because it was literally handcrafted stitching, which was, to my point, like literally every stitch. And I doubt it was really sewn by hand, but it was at least done in such precision that it looked, it was these cowboy boots were a piece of art. And then at the end of the day, you have them, they're made and they're beautiful, and then you wear them. And so they're functional in terms of, like, you can move through them, and you can do things with them, and you can go places with them. And so such is the story of the Lord, that He knows exactly what you're going to look like. He knows exactly what gender you're going to be, either male or female, that you're going to have this color hair, and you're going to have this color eyes, and you're going to be this height, and all of these things that are all strategic and crafted with all the thought and intention in the world, literally, that you are the person that God made you to be. And okay, you may have a weight issue because who knows, like you could be eating like Lucky Charms for like every morning for breakfast or something. You could be on all these like processed foods or whatever. You could have a weight issue or other issues, like you go through the hormonal period of acne or whatever, all
Stress.
Of these things. I mean, but at the end of the day, this is why we're having such an identity crisis with our youth right now, because one of our biggest battles is understanding who we are and our identity. And that was a lot of what the book is about, is understanding my identity in Christ and saying, okay, because you accept me and you love me for who I am and who you've made me to be, then I can live in that. I can live in that. and you can put your proverbial foot in me, and you can go with me where you will. And just like the cowboy boots. And my heart, even though I fight against it, and I'm very strong in my wording against what's happening with identity and all of this gender stuff and all of that, I'm very forceful with it. I'm very passionate about it because I went through such an identity crisis as well. Like, I understand it. And were I 12 years old right now in 2024 having an identity crisis, I joke, and it's not even ha funny, but I sort of say I probably would have thought that I was like some sort of gender or non-binary or whatever. Because when you give children the option to identify with something that is not anything but what they're going through, and anything but the hard time that they're going through, or the feelings or the depression or the hormones or whatever, or the bullying or the rejection, when you give them an option to be something, they will grab onto it, whatever it is. So I went through personally in high school, like my Metallica phase, like my hard rock phase, my punk phase. I went through my jock phase. I went through a phase where, like, I thought this was like a big joke of mine, but I thought I was black. Like, I would actually tell people, because I was so like wanted an identity that I would tell people, I don't know if I was like joking with them or seeing how far I could take it, but like that I had like a quarter black in me because I have really curly hair. People would believe me too. But I use that as a point that I was also grabbing onto an identity for years and years until I came to the Lord at 29. And even so, my book chronicles that even when I knew the Lord, I still had to go through many things to really truly find my identity in Christ.
But once you realize that you're being accepted by the Lord, then you have to be accepted by your dad. So for instance, on the page 53, you write this thing: I've always hungered for that from him. So then you write on the next page, I've always craved a father's love. Then page 139, you're talking about your dad as well, okay? You say, because I believe that I wasn't loved, I desperately sought it out in different ways. I treated myself with disrespect, sleeping with men in hopes that they would somehow love me. Then in page 173, you talk about this as well. It was my special father-daughter time. I could only imagine what it's like when people grow up only with mother or only with a father, right? And I can only imagine what it's like to grow up in a family where there is no God at all. And you're confused. You have no idea who are you, what are you supposed to do? Were you made even intentionally with a purpose, or you were just a product of an evolution? Your grandparents were an ape, and you became a human being. So don't you think that everything that happened that you write in this book is just a father issue? If he would say that he loves you, and he would continue telling you so, since you're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, and doing this every year, every day, just once a day. I love you, Simone. You're the best.
I'm not gonna chalk it up to say that everything that I went through was a father issue. And I'm tearing up now because even since I've written the book, which I haven't read for years, I don't just sit around and read my story all the time. Things have really changed where my parents have moved close to me, and now I'm honoring my mother and father by taking care of them and doing all this. And I really see a change of heart in my father in many ways. I think it was part of it. I think that father-daughter relationship is huge, but I also think the mother-daughter relationship is huge as well. And your parents are a product of their parents. So they do the best that they can with what they know how to do, in many ways. And, I think that my parents did the best that they knew how to do with what they had been given and the tools that they had been given. And I think that also the time that I was born in those years and that I was growing up, I think there was real pressure on my parents then to have this two-person income. I think, my mom went through the feminist movement, all of that. And so she wasn't home with me. And so she was working all the time, and my dad was working all the time. And I was the youngest of 3. So I didn't have a lot of parental supervision. And then I think by default didn't feel the love and nurturing from my parents because they thought my mom literally said, tongue-in-cheek, a few different times in my life, well, the other 2 girls turned out fine, so I just thought Simone could raise herself. And I understand that thinking, right? But it's just not, it's not, it's not, that's not how it works, right? And then anytime you let your child raise itself or his or herself, it doesn't go very well because it's child, which again, if we want to kind of tie it back to everything that what we were talking about earlier, which is letting a child decide whether or not they want to tell their parent that they're gay or bisexual or non-binary or a cat or whatever, like that the teacher would keep it a secret or whatever, is just bananas, because a child can't raise themselves. And you don't let a kid drive until they're 16 or 18. You don't let them vote until they're 18. You don't let them go to the military until they're 18. They can't drink until they're 21, but you can let a child decide this, that, or the other about a really critical decision in their life. I say that to say that it doesn't work well. That experiment doesn't work well. It doesn't bode well for the child, especially when they become a teenager, like my story. But I want to say this about that if I did not get saved and become a Christian at 29, I would probably be dead. I really think I was on that trajectory.
Suicide?
Probably suicide through destructive behavior, like just all the things that I was doing, drinking and just being reckless, all the things I was doing.
Driving drunk multiple times.
Yeah, that I would have literally looking back on it, like the Lord saved me for his the Lord literally did not let me die because I was going to come to him to be then used by the Lord and for his plans and purposes. And he knew that he was breeding a fighter in me. And that's the thing about praying about today and knowing that you were talking about my book, is that we have to go through some of these things in order to become the person that God wants us to be. And I didn't think my life was worth living. I thought I just wasn't happy. I wasn't joyous. I wasn't happy. I was finding my peace in everything that was not good, like most people do. And when I came to know the Lord, I jumped in. It was like jumping off a cliff. I felt the tangible presence of the Lord when I gave my heart to Jesus. I felt peace that passed all understanding, quite literally, and the love of God just flooding my heart and my body. And I'm like, this is better than anything I've ever experienced. And I just wanted that for the rest of my life. Do I have it every day? No, because I live in my flesh, right? I live in my body, and it's not realistic. We live in the world, but I have that there. I have that there, and I can ask for it. Like, Lord, please bring your peace that passes all understanding to me right now. I don't, thank God, have those coping mechanisms anymore. I mean, when I get really stressed out, I work out a lot, and that's like a coping mechanism, but that's not a bad thing. You do have to deal with some things with your body, with stress and cortisol, that bring a homeostasis. But yeah, I mean.
But your life is a success story, right? So I'm gonna tell you my mother's story.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was parented by both parents, mother and father, but they overparented her.
Mm-hmm.
When she was 21 to 23 years old, they wouldn't let her even go almost outside till, I want to say, till 10 p.m., be home, study. Then she met my dad, and she saw the only way out of this overparenting. So she married my dad, then I was born, and as far as I know at this moment, my mom never loved my dad. So after I was born, I want to say 1 or 2 years later, she tried to get a divorce, but her parents didn't let her. Even she was living with my dad, with her husband. They said, no, don't do that. That would be a big mistake. Then I remember myself being 10 years old, maybe 12 years old, and I remember those parties, right? So my parents were 30, 35 years old, and they were partying. Mm-hmm. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and sometimes there were parties only one day, maybe Friday night, maybe Saturday night, maybe they lasted for 2 to 3 days. But I always remember that my dad on Monday morning, he always went to his job. My mom, from time to time, she had a holiday. She called her workplace and said, I'm not coming today. Then I realized that from time to time, once in 6 months, she drinks after those parties are over. She drinks for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, right, in a row. Like, there's something not good with this. So the time passed by, and when I was 15, maybe 18 years old, it became more regular, not once in 6 months, but once in 4 months, maybe once in 3 months. Then I remember 2014. So I'm 27 years old, and my mom was at the time 48 years old, and she was struggling. So over 24 years, she was living with a man that she didn't love at the first place, and she struggled with it. She struggled with her identity, I want to say. She liked her job, but I believe she wanted to become someone else, and she was always drinking mm-hmm. with her friends and peers. Mm-hmm. And in 2014, she was drunk. I was on a call with her, and I told her, on Tuesday night, I'm gonna come and we're gonna have some lunch, okay? Okay, so I come to her place and she's drunk. Mm-hmm. And I remember myself telling her, like, that's it, I'm done, bye-bye. Mm-hmm. After 3 days, I called my dad. I was like, how's mom? She's not good. She's still drinking. Yeah, she's still drinking. So I came to visit her on Saturday. That was June 11th. She didn't wake up. So we called the ambulance. It was like, something's wrong. My mom can't wake up. Mm-hmm. She's drunk, but she can't wake up. Mm-hmm. So the problem was the blood vessel exploded in her head, and her brain was under the blood for too long time. Mm-hmm. So 3.5 years in a coma, right. And she passed away when she passed in 2018, so she was 53, wow. But she got into a coma when she was 48 years old, wow. Only. So her story got me realize that I can't go against the nature, I can't go against God. And the interesting part is that she was never religious, like never. We were never religious in our family. But prior to her getting into coma, she went and found the church, the Greek Orthodox church, where she was baptized 40-something years ago. She went, found that church. She did something in that church. Maybe she was seeking for God. Maybe she was seeking for Jesus. I don't know what she was doing back then. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, like a few days before that incident, mm-hmm. she found God. Mm-hmm. And that's the only reason I'm kind of happy for her. Right. I believe she had her salvation, and right. she was saved. And I hope that she is upstairs, not the downstairs.
Right. Right.
And when you write this thing on a page 158, I have this highlighted. You say, it was clear. Alcohol was and always has been a gateway for me to slide back into sin. Yeah. That's my mother's story. But you have a success story, and she didn't succeed.
Yeah.
But you're turning 50 next week.
Yeah.
That's only the beginning for you. That life just only begins once you found your true passion, especially with the movie that you got, Letter to the American Church. It's only the beginning.
Yeah. Well, my parents are just turning 84, as I had mentioned, and gosh, I mean, we have some seriously good genes in our family. I mean, my grandparents lived until they were over 100. Not
Oh,
all of
wow.
them, but a few of them. Barring any like significant whatever. Those are the genes that I have, but it's that I like. It's a challenge, right? Life's a challenge. So I'm not like, oh, happy me. I get to live until whatever. But I do. I always come back to this in my life with the Lord and my life and how I choose to live it. That I want to stand in front of the Lord one day, and I want to hear him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And, I do the things that I do. I wrote the book. I didn't want to write the book and expose my life, but he told me to write it. And it took me a long time to write it. It took me like 5 years or more because it was hard, and I didn't know. I had never written a book, and I had never... I'm a writer, but I needed to craft the story so that it was an interesting read, and hire an editor and self-publish it and learn how to do all that. But everything that I've done, I don't want to say everything, most things that I've done that have been mile markers in my life, like my book or my film, or, that he's said, do this. Mm-hmm. He's very clearly said, do this. And even my time on local city council and in politics, that he's very clearly said, do this, because it's not easy. It is easier to sit on the couch watching Netflix and eating bonbons. It is easier. But, I read these stories in the Bible, as we were talking about, and I'll continue to bring them up, that it's like the hero in a movie, or whatever, like they did major things, major destiny changing things. And if we're not living like that, it doesn't have to be writing a book or writing a film. I mean, a destiny changing thing may be going to city council and getting them to pass a resolution against a bad bill in California. Mm-hmm. Like, it may be, that could be a destiny changing decision for you, or for the country, or for your city, or whatever. Like it could be that. It could be a choice that you make with your child to take away their iPhone or their iPad and start getting them to read on a regular basis. That could be a destiny changing decision for your child. And so, I think we need to start living like that. That's like my main message is start finding out. You may not know the Lord, but ask. Like, that was my first question, and I think it was your first question too, actually, before you came to know the Lord. Like, is there a God? God, if you're there, show me. And I've heard so many stories about people saying that that's like literally they came to the Lord just like a few weeks later, a few months later. God, if you're real, show me. And then he does. Like, is the best prayer to pray. And,
It's funny you say so, because I remember myself in 2022, we were living in Spain for a year at that moment, and I didn't know what I'm going to do in life, and I wasn't happy. We were living in a great place, 2 minutes out from the beach, right? We were earning money online, everything was fine, but I didn't find my purpose. And just one day, I was like, there was a new thought in my head. You have to go to the US, you have to try doing podcasts worldwide. I was like, where does this thing come from? Where did this idea come from? I was having this idea for 1 to 2 weeks. I was thinking about it before I was going to sleep, the first thing in the morning when I woke up. And then I told my wife, I said, honey, we got to deal with this. And then we came to the U.S. for a month. I showed her the U.S. She fell in love. And I believe that's the thing, that's why I'm here. I'm happy doing the podcast. And only now when I'm on a path, I'm on a road to know the God, the Lord, only then I understood, like, wait a minute. So that was his voice in my head. Hey, go there to do that, and you'll find your purpose. And I believe I found this, the purpose, by listening to the Lord, to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I would like to end the podcast with one thing. So on the last page, you write, our lives are like climbing up to one mountain peak and looking into the distance, only to see many more peaks lying before us. And we can only climb and achieve those mountain peaks if we have freedom, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you have read this book. That's a small book, Ayn Rand Anthem. It was written in 1938, I want to say. And there is amazing thing in this book, so I want to read it. But I still wonder how it was possible in those graceless years of transition long ago that men did not see where they were going and went on in blindness and cowardice to their fate. I wonder what it is hard for me to conceive how men who knew the word I could give it up and not know what they have lost. But such has been the story, for I have lived in the city of the damned, and I know what horror men permitted to be brought upon them. It's exactly what is going on right now in the United States of America. And on November 5th, we're going to find out whether we live in a dystopia or we're in the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Yeah.
I just hope that you Americans, you just don't lose this country, because that's the only and the last oyster that you and I have.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming the second time.
Thank
you for opening
having me.
up. I'm sorry I brought you to tears. Actually, the book is written very well and it's very easy to read. So this is the book that I'm going to hand to my wife because she's only learning English, right? And this is the book that she can definitely read, and it's not going to be hard to her. So guys and gals, everyone who's listening or watching, get the book. I bought it on Amazon. Yeah, that's an amazing book. And the stories that I read here, the story of San Francisco, for instance, how wonderful the city once was. And now you have a map of feces in San Francisco.
I know.
Bring the country back. Bring the safety and the normality back to this country.
Lord. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Apollo.